The evening felt normal at first, the kind of dinner Zahara had sat through her whole life. The long wooden table in the middle of their small house in Makuta Springs was filled with the smell of steaming cassava stew and roasted chicken. Everyone was talking over each other, plates clinking, chairs scraping the floor. But Zahara could already sense something was off. Her mother, Mama Ruvimbo, kept giving her sharp side glances, whispering under her breath as she placed dishes on the table. It wasn't loud enough to understand, but it was loud enough for Zahara to feel it. That familiar sting in her chest started again, the one she knew too well. Zahara tried to smile, even though she felt like she was sitting in the wrong place, like the table itself rejected her. Her siblings were laughing together, nudging each other, talking about their day like she wasn't even there. Every now and then, Mama Ruvimbo would look at Zahara with that irritated expression, the one that said she was already disappointed before Zahara even spoke a word. Zahara picked at her food quietly, trying to stay invisible, hoping the night would pass without drama. But the tension was thick. It wrapped around her shoulders like a heavy blanket. Every breath felt heavier. She could feel her mother's eyes on her, waiting, almost preparing for her to say something wrong. There was a tightness in the air, a quiet storm building under the sound of utensils and small talk. Zahara swallowed hard, forcing a tiny smile, pretending everything was normal, even though her heart was whispering, something is coming. And deep down, she knew tonight wouldn't stay normal for long. When Zahara finally gathered the courage to speak, it was something small, something harmless. She simply started talking about her day at work, how she had helped a difficult customer, how she solved a problem her supervisor was struggling with. Her voice was soft but hopeful, trying to share a tiny moment of pride with people who never cared to listen. But she barely got 3 sentences out before her mother snapped. Mama Ruvimbo didn't just interrupt her. She cut through her words like a knife. Loud enough for the whole neighborhood to hear, she shouted, "Stop talking like you're someone important. You're a failure, Zahara." The sound hit Zahara like a slap. The room fell completely silent. Even the ceiling fan seemed to hesitate for a second, as if shocked by the harshness of the words. Sephew stopped chewing mid-bite and leaned back with a mocking grin. Nala raised an eyebrow, a slow smirk pulling at her lips. They didn't look surprised. They looked entertained, like they were waiting for the show to start. Zahara felt her throat tighten. Her hands trembled slightly under the table. She tried to swallow the growing lump in her throat, but the words echoed in her mind, each time heavier than before. Failure. Her own mother said it like it was the only truth in the world. She forced herself to keep her face neutral, to pretend it didn't hurt as much as it did. But inside, a sharp sting spread across her chest. She stared down at her plate, focusing on the tiny grains of rice, trying not to blink too fast because she could feel the heat in her eyes. Mama Ruvimbo wasn't done. She let out a dismissive scoff, shaking her head as if Zahara had embarrassed her by simply opening her mouth. "You always talk too much," she added, waving her hand. "As if anything you do matters." Zahara inhaled slowly, pushing back the tears. She wasn't surprised. She had heard this kind of thing before. But something about the way her siblings looked at her tonight, amused and satisfied, made the pain sharper. It wasn't just an insult. It was a humiliation delivered in front of people who were happy to see her fall. Her stomach twisted. She wanted to shrink, to disappear into the chair, to walk out into the quiet night and never come back. But she stayed still, calm on the outside, shaking on the inside. This moment, this first blow was the spark, the beginning of a fire she didn't know she had. Sephew was the first to jump in, like he had been waiting for permission. He leaned back in his chair, laughing loudly, the kind of laugh meant to embarrass, not entertain. "Zahara, please," he said, wiping fake tears from his eyes. "She'll never amount to anything. She can't even keep a normal job. She's just stuck." He said it with so much confidence, as if he knew her whole future better than she did. His words hit the table like stones, cruel, heavy, and unnecessary. Nala didn't even look up from her plate. She stabbed a piece of chicken with her fork and said in the calmest, coldest voice, "She's a burden. Always has been. No emotion, no hesitation, just a sharp knife disguised as a sentence." Mama Ruvimbo nodded in agreement, like her children were simply stating facts. "You see," she said, "even they know. You bring nothing here, Zahara. Nothing." The room shifted, felt smaller, the air thicker. Zahara sat still, her hands folded under the table, pressing into each other just enough to keep her from shaking. She could feel the sting rise again, the kind that travels from your chest to your throat and burns your eyes. But she kept her face still. controlled. Because what else could she do? If she cried, they would laugh. If she argued, they would say she was disrespectful. If she stayed quiet, they would call her weak. So Zahara did the only thing left. She held herself together. Sephu mimicked her voice, exaggerating her tone, pretending to sound soft and innocent. Nala rolled her eyes dramatically every time Zahara lifted her head. Even the younger cousins at the table exchanged glances, smirking like they were watching a comedy show. They treated her like she was less than them, like she was a joke, like she didn't deserve to sit at that table. But Zahara didn't break, not this time. She sat upright, her back straight, her eyes fixed on her plate, even as the storm of insults swirled around her. Her silence wasn't weakness, it was survival. Inside her mind, a different voice whispered, quiet but firm. One day this won't touch you anymore. They didn't see it. They didn't hear it. They didn't even notice that Zahara was no longer shrinking. She was absorbing every word, building a strength none of them expected. While they mocked her like she was nothing, Zahara was slowly becoming someone they would never forget. While they were busy tearing her down, there was something they didn't know, something Zahara had carried alone for months without saying a single word. Behind her quiet smile, behind her soft voice, behind her calm silent reactions, she was the one keeping this entire house running. For 8 long months, Zahara had been secretly paying every major bill. The water bill that always came late, the electricity bill that threatened disconnection twice, the rent top-ups that her mother swore she would handle soon. Every time Mama Ruvimbo complained about money being tight, Zahara quietly sent another mobile money payment. Every time Sephu boasted about contributing to the house, when he hadn't even paid for his own phone data, Zahara ignored it and covered the next overdue bill anyway. Even when Nala rolled her eyes at her for being broke, Zahara was the one keeping the lights on. No one asked where the payments came from. No one asked who was helping. They all assumed it was Mama Ruvimbo, the responsible one, or maybe Sephu, the successful one, or Nala, who bragged about her small promotions. Not one person ever looked at Zahara, the one they mocked, and thought maybe it's her. She never corrected them. She never bragged. She never even hinted. She just helped quietly because she believed family was supposed to take care of each other, even when they didn't take care of you back. Every month, she sacrificed something for them. A new pair of shoes, a weekend out, groceries for herself, even her savings. She chose bills over comfort, stability over treating herself. She chose them over and over, even though they never chose her. And tonight, as they insulted her, calling her useless, a failure, a burden, she felt something crack. Not because their words were new, but because she knew the truth they had never bothered to see. They survived on the very failure they loved to hate. Zahara looked around the table at all the loud mouths and proud faces, and she realized that for 8 months, she had been carrying people who wouldn't even bend down to pick her up if she fell. They thought she was nothing, but she was the reason they still had running water. She was the reason the food was cooked on a stove with electricity. She was the reason the landlord wasn't knocking on their door demanding rent. The truth sat quietly inside her, warm and powerful, a secret she was finally ready to stop hiding. Mama Ruvimbo wasn't finished. If anything, the silence around the table only encouraged her. She leaned forward, elbows on the table, eyes locked on Zahara like she was something stuck to the bottom of her shoe. Her voice dropped lower, sharper, the kind of tone meant to cut straight into the soul. "Look at your siblings," she said slowly, almost proudly. "Successful, achievers, doing something with their lives. Then there's you, useless." The word hit the air so hard it felt like the whole room flinched. Even Sephu and Nala paused, just for a second, surprised at how harsh she went. But then the smirks returned, small, satisfied, like they were enjoying a front-row seat to Zahara's humiliation. Zahara felt the words sink deep, heavier than all the insults before. Useless. Her own mother said it so casually, like it was her name, like it was a label she deserved to carry forever. She felt her chest tighten, her heart slowing down as if trying to protect itself. She lowered her eyes not because she agreed, but because she was exhausted. Exhausted from trying, from caring, from giving, from silently supporting a family that never supported her back. Mama Ruvimbo kept talking, listing all the things Sephu achieved, bragging about Nala's promotions, pretending she raised champions. Not once did she mention the months of bills magically paid on time. Not once did she question who was actually responsible for keeping this household from falling apart. To her, Zahara was nothing. Zahara's fingers curled slightly on her lap. She felt a sting in her eyes, but she blinked it back. Crying here would only feed them. They wanted a reaction, they wanted to see her break. They wanted proof that their words had power. She wouldn't give it to them. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes steady even though her heart was breaking. For the first time that night, she didn't look small. She looked tired, deeply tired, but strong in a quiet, dangerous way. A way none of them noticed because they never cared to look. Inside her something settled, something final, something done. She exhaled softly, a long breath she had been holding for years. In that breath was every moment she had been overlooked, dismissed, disrespected. In that breath was the end of the old Zahara, the one who kept forgiving, kept helping, kept hoping her family would one day see her value. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. But in that slow, calm breath, Zahara let go. She didn't know it yet, but the girl they called useless was about to show them the kind of power they never saw coming. Zahara let the silence sit for a moment. It wasn't the scared kind of silence she used to hide behind. This one was controlled, steady, almost peaceful. Everyone at the table was still watching her like they were waiting for her to cry, or stand up, or run away. But instead, she lifted her chin just a little and spoke in a voice that was calm, too calm. "If I'm such a failure," she said softly, "then tell me, who's been paying your bills?" Felt like the whole house stopped breathing. Sephew froze with a piece of chicken halfway to his mouth. Nala's fork slipped from her hand and hit the plate. Even the cousins who were pretending not to listen leaned forward a little. And Mama Ruvimbo, the loudest one in the room minutes ago, suddenly went still. Her shoulders stiffened, her eyes flickering just once, like she had been hit with a truth she never expected to face. The question hung in the air like a bomb nobody wanted to touch. Zahara didn't blink. She didn't look away. She wasn't raising her voice or shaking or trying to explain herself. She simply sat there, steady, as if she had finally stepped into her own power. For the first time she wasn't shrinking. She wasn't apologizing. She was holding them accountable, something none of them saw coming. Sephew looked at Mama Ruvimbo, confused. Didn't you pay them?" he asked, his voice suddenly smaller. Nala's eyes narrowed. "Wait, are you saying?" Zahara didn't even need to finish the sentence. Her silence was loud enough. Her mother swallowed hard, the first sign of real fear showing in her eyes. She tried to straighten up, tried to regain control, but her voice betrayed her. What nonsense are you talking about?" she muttered, not meeting Zahara's gaze. But Zahara wasn't moved. She kept her expression calm, almost gentle, but her words carried weight now, weight they couldn't ignore. "For 8 months," she said quietly, "every bill that came to this house, paid it. Not you. Not them. Me." A pin could have dropped and echoed through the room. Sephew's mouth fell open. Nala stared as if she were seeing Zahara for the first time. The cousins looked away awkwardly. And Mama Ruvimbo. She looked like someone had pulled the ground right from under her feet. Zahara didn't smile. She didn't boast. She didn't look proud or angry. She simply existed in her truth, a truth she had carried silently while they mocked her, insulted her, and dismissed her. The room that once felt heavy with insults was now heavy with shock. And as they all sat there, stunned, Zahara finally felt something she hadn't felt in years. Control. Zahara didn't rush. She reached calmly into her small handbag, the same one her mother always mocked for being cheap, and pulled out a neatly folded stack of papers. Her movements were slow, steady, intentional, almost too quiet for a moment this explosive. Everyone stared. Sephew leaned forward. Nala stopped breathing. Even the cousins sat up straight, eyes wide. Zahara placed the stack of papers on the table, right next to her untouched plate of food. Then, without looking at anyone, she spread them out, one by one. Bank statements, mobile money receipts, payment confirmations, 8 months' worth. Her name was on every single one. Her transactions, her money, her sacrifices. Each paper was a piece of truth they had ignored for months. "These," Zahara said softly, "are the bills you think Mama paid." The color drained from Mama Ruvimbo's face so quickly it looked like someone had unplugged the life out of her. Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. The confidence she had at the start of dinner was gone, replaced by panic, shock, and a shame she didn't know how to hide. Sephew grabbed one of the receipts, eyes scanning it with disbelief. "Wait, this is your number," he whispered. Nala snatched another paper, flipping it over like it might magically change. "No, no way," she breathed, shaking her head. Zahara wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She just sat there with the calmness of someone who had finally laid down a burden she had carried alone for too long. She looked at her mother slowly, not with hate, but with a deep tiredness. You told them you were paying, she said gently. But you weren't. I was. Mama Ruvimbo's fingers twitched on the table. She tried to speak, but all she managed was a weak, broken whisper. Zahara, why would you do this? Why wouldn't you tell us? Zahara gave a small, sad smile, the kind that comes from years of being unappreciated. Because I didn't do it for praise, she said. I did it so this family could breathe. Her siblings stared at her like they were seeing a stranger. The girl they called useless, the one they mocked, the one they dismissed, had been the backbone of the entire household. The silence in the room didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt ashamed. And as Zahara sat there, surrounded by proof of her kindness, she finally saw the truth in their eyes. They never knew her worth, but now they couldn't deny it. Sephew slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. His face was red, a mix of anger and disbelief. You told us you were paying all this time, he shouted at Mama Ruvimbo. All this money, all these bills. We've been praising the wrong person. Nala's fork clattered to the floor as she leaned forward, voice sharp and trembling. Yes, you lied to us. We thought we didn't have to worry because you were taking care of everything. And all along it was Zahara. Mama Ruvimbo opened her mouth, tried to respond, but the words got caught in her throat. She looked between her children, and for the first time, there was no respect or fear, only blame and outrage reflected back at her. The room erupted. Sephew pointed at Mama Ruvimbo, then at Nala. Nala pointed back at him. Voices overlapped, accusations flying in every direction. You should have told us. You always act like you know everything. You never trusted anyone. You never did anything for yourself. Even the younger cousins started whispering and pointing, caught in the chaos of adults unraveling before them. The family that had moments ago treated Zahara like she was nothing now turned inward, arguing among themselves, scrambling to assign blame for what Zahara had quietly carried alone. Through all the shouting, Zahara stayed seated for a moment, watching. Her heart thumped in her chest, but she didn't join the chaos. She didn't shout. She didn't argue. She simply let them fight while she realized just how powerless they were without her, how lost they were in the storm she had weathered silently for them. After a few long seconds, Zahara pushed her chair back slowly, deliberately. It made a small scraping sound against the floor, but it cut through the noise like a bell. Heads turned toward her, some in anger, some in confusion. She stood, tall and composed, letting the papers of receipts still spread on the table catch the light. She didn't need to yell over their chaos. Her presence said it all. She had been the one keeping this family afloat, and now she was done. Her gaze swept over the room, calm but strong. She could see the panic and shame on her mother's face. She could see the surprise in her siblings' eyes. And she could feel a surge of freedom rising inside her, the kind that comes from finally stepping out of a world that never recognized your worth. Zahara took a deep breath and whispered just enough for them to hear. You never saw my worth, so you don't deserve my help. With that, she turned and walked out, her small handbag swinging at her side, leaving the chaos behind. The family that had mocked her, dismissed her, and taken her for granted were left to face the consequences of their own blindness. For the first time in years, Zahara felt light. She had given them everything silently, and now she was giving herself freedom. Zahara stood for a moment, letting the chaos swirl around her. Her siblings were still shouting, her mother's face was pale and frozen, and the cousins were whispering nervously. But for the first time, Zahara felt a strange calm wash over her. She wasn't scared. She wasn't pleading. She wasn't begging for recognition. She simply knew her next move, and it was hers alone. She picked up her small handbag, the one everyone had always mocked as too tiny, too simple. It held nothing fancy, just her essentials, but now it felt like a symbol of everything she had carried silently for years. She slung it over her shoulder with quiet confidence, feeling the weight of it, and the weight she had finally lifted off her own shoulders. Then, in a soft voice that cut through the remaining noise, she said, You never saw my worth, so you don't deserve my help. The words were gentle, but each one landed like a hammer. No yelling, no tears, just truth. Her mother's mouth opened, trying to say something, but no sound came. Her siblings froze mid-argument, staring at her like she had grown taller in that moment. Zahara didn't look back. She didn't need to. Everything she had ever done, every quiet sacrifice, every unpaid recognition, was in that one sentence, and they finally understood, even if it hurt. She walked past the table slowly, deliberately, letting the papers of receipts and bank statements flutter slightly in the air behind her. Each step felt lighter than the last, as if she was shedding years of being unappreciated, unseen and mocked. The house that had once felt suffocating now felt smaller, trapped in its own chaos while she moved freely out of it. Outside, the cool air of Makuta Springs touched her face. She inhaled deeply, tasting freedom for the first time in years. Her heart, still pounding, wasn't afraid anymore. She was calm, collected, powerful in a way no one at that table could take from her. For the first time in her life, she wasn't just surviving under their judgment, she was stepping into her own life on her own terms. Each step away from the house echoed a promise to herself: no more sacrifices for people who refused to see her, no more quiet suffering for those who dismissed her. As she reached the gate, she glanced back once, not with anger, not with sadness, but with quiet certainty. She was done, truly done. And with that, Zahara walked away, leaving behind the noise, the insults, and the family that never understood her. She carried only her small handbag, her courage, and the knowledge that for the first time, she was completely, beautifully free. Weeks later, Zahara stood in a sleek office in Haruma City, signing the contract that would change her life. The paper felt heavy with possibility, but in the best way, not heavy like a burden, but like promise finally realized. She was officially joining a major tech firm, one of the fastest growing in the city, and this was just the beginning. Her hard work, her sacrifices, and her patience had finally paid off. After signing, she moved into her own apartment for the first time. The space was small but perfect, all hers, a place where she could breathe, think, and plan without judgment. The furniture was simple, but every item was hers because she had earned it. She unpacked her small handbag, the same one she had carried through every struggle, and smiled, realizing that everything she needed had always been inside her: courage, intelligence, and persistence. Meanwhile, back in Makuta Springs, life at the old house began to change fast. The bills Zahara had quietly handled for months, water, electricity, rent top-ups, stopped being paid. The family scrambled. Arguments broke out, phones rang unanswered, lights flickered, water went off, and the reality of their dependency hit them like a storm. They finally saw what they had ignored for so long: the failure they mocked, the useless daughter they dismissed, was the very backbone of their home. And Zahara, she watched their struggles from afar, her heart calm and steady. She didn't gloat. She didn't celebrate in front of them. She simply continued building her life, thriving on her own terms. Her strength, patience, and quiet dedication had created something they could never understand until it was gone. She posted a short message on her social media, just a few words that quickly went viral. "They called me nothing until I gave them nothing." It was simple, sharp, and unforgettable. People shared it, tagged their friends, and admired her courage. Zahara smiled, feeling lighter than she had in years. She had left behind the weight of neglect, insult, and invisibility, stepping fully into a life that was hers alone. For the first time she was free. And for the first time they realized exactly what they had lost.